The right verdict. Well, what's the right verdict? Is that the one that the 12 people are coming up with? That supposedly is the right verdict. He already decided what the right verdict was. And he's president of the United States. Yeah. So will the comments that President Biden, Maxine Waters made, could they be part of an appeal? Joining us now to discuss, distinguished university professor at Touro College, Thane Rosenbaum, and constitutional law attorney Amir Benno. Thane, I will start with you. What grounds have you seen? And even the judge himself was suggesting that they could be grounds for appeal. Does that sound right?
Well, Bob, it's interesting because when the judge said that, my first thought was, if you feel so strongly about it, why didn't you order a mistrial?
Yeah, and he,
right?
He rejected that argument.
Why not just do it there? If you feel so convinced that this will be overturned on appeal, then you probably feel that there's a legal issue here that's going to come back to haunt you. Look, there was he denied the change of venue, right? So from the very beginning, the idea that could my client get a fair trial in the birthplace of Black Lives Matter summer? This is where everything started. All the civil unrest, the peaceful riots and the violent riots. Is this the place that he could get a fair trial? By not sequestering the jury, they were exposed to so much. It may not have been in time, but they knew about the $27 million civil settlement. What were they supposed to conclude at that point? They had so many outside influences. Remember, jurors are not supposed to have any influences other than what's presented in court. If it's not in court, they can't use it. So you can't bring a Bible into the courtroom. But here there were so many outside influences: the civil settlement, the Maxine Waters comment that you just mentioned, the Joe Biden question that you just mentioned, of course, again, the change of venue. And look, we don't know what the sentence will be, right? What if the sentence is at the maximum, and then the question then becomes, this isn't a hardcore criminal, he's not a career criminal, he's not a hardcore felon. Is he being overpunished to redress the police misconduct for every person policeman who ever killed or brutalized a black man? That's a possible appeal as well.
Amir, along with all those things that Thane was just discussing, on top of that, while the jury was not sequestered, you also had the shooting of Daunte Wright. You also had this 13-year-old who was shot and killed at, 3 o'clock in the morning. You also had a defense witness where they targeted what they thought was his home with pig's blood and spread it all over the outside. It turned out it was not, in fact, that witness's home. How in the world do you think the jury was not aware of all of this happening before they were eventually sequestered?
They were clearly aware of it. I mean, the fact is they weren't sequestered. That was a mistake. And frankly, even though Joe Biden said they're sequestered and he commented on the merits of the case, those sorts of things can still seep into the jury room and into their deliberations. And I'll just remind you that when Donald Trump remarked on General Flynn about being a good person and on his character, the left was so quick to condemn him for intervening and interjecting in the criminal justice, the court system. But here we have a president who actually addresses the merits of a case while the case is under deliberation. It's really unheard of. I'll also just add 2 more points to it. I think Thane has mostly comprehensively addressed, which is 2 of the charges, the murder charges, may not be legally sustainable. A felony murder charge requires that there be a murder in the course of committing a felony. Usually, and most typically, that felony has to be something other than the assault or the murder itself. So if you're robbing a store and you shoot a gun in the air to scare people off and the bullet hits somebody else and kills them, that would be a felony murder. Courts have typically said that you cannot have a felony murder based on an assault, which is exactly what this was. The second argument, the legal argument, is which is before the Minnesota Supreme Court right now, has to do with whether or not this depraved indifference murder, that's a 3rd-degree murder, is actually something that you can recognize at law. That kind of a charge typically applies when you do something that would affect a group of people, say driving a car through a crowded sidewalk, you might mow some people down and kill them. That's when the depraved indifference murder typically applies, not a one-on-one case. And like I said, the Minnesota Supreme Court is addressing, in a separate case, but addressing this issue currently. So they may resolve this in a way that requires that Chauvin's conviction on that count be thrown out as well.
So a lot could happen, especially between now and sentencing, which is 8 weeks away. And they have, 60 days to appeal as well. Thane and Amir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Lots to discuss. Well, coming up, the latest on the fight against coronavirus. And if you want more great information on coronavirus, be sure to check out Dr. Chauncey Crandall's book. It's called Fight Back. In it, he writes about how you can beat the coronavirus and avoid infection. It is a #1 Amazon bestseller, and it's in bookstores everywhere or online. More of American Agenda after this.